A massive prison break that saw 528 detainees fleeing. While most have been captured, 140 of them are still on the loose. 6 detainees, including 2 women and children, were killed after they were hit by a car while trying to escape. The incident happened at 4:30 a.m. when the detainees, who are all Rohingya, broke the grille and door to a block in the detention center. Following their escape, villagers nearby managed to apprehend 88 of them before surrendering them to the immigration authorities. Subsequently, police rearrested some 382 detainees. Meanwhile, Kedah Police Chief Commissioner Wan Hassan Wan Ahmad explained that his party and the Penang police are working together to track down the remaining escapees. The police has called on the public with any information on the detainees to immediately inform them. Malaysian death row inmate Nagaenthran Dharmalingam is scheduled to be executed in Singapore next Wednesday. The Singapore court rejected his final appeal against a death sentence imposed for drug trafficking charges.
Nagaenthran was originally scheduled to be hanged in November, but the plan sparked criticism due to his lower-than-average IQ of 69. He was granted a stay of execution after his lawyer M. Ravi filed an 11th-hour challenge at the Court of Appeal. Nagaenthran has been on a death row for more than a decade for trafficking about 43 grams into Singapore in 2009. The court ruled Nagaenthran to be on the borderline of having functional intellect and came to the conclusion that he was aware that he was committing a crime.
Sarawak will begin giving out the second COVID-19 booster dose this Friday. Deputy Premier Dato' Ahmad Douglas Uga said the rollout would be allocated to eligible recipients under 2 categories. The first is for individuals aged 60 and above with high-risk comorbidities, whereas the second category applies to individuals aged 12 and above who are moderate or severely immunocompromised. He said the vaccination will be carried out at all vaccination centres (PPVs), at government clinics, private hospitals and private clinics. Health Minister Khairy Jamaluddin once again called for the bill on youth smoking ban to be passed when it is tabled in Dewan Rakyat this July. Khairy, in a tweet today, said that the new law would be a generational endgame to smoking. He added that the Health Ministry is prepared to face any challenges while implementing the generational endgame policy. The policy seeks to introduce a new Tobacco and Smoking Control Act to ban smoking and possession of tobacco products, including electronic vaporizers, for people born after 2005. He added that enforcement would be an issue, but his ministry is ready to step up efforts to ensure its success. The remaining 4 of the 16 Malaysians who claim to be victims of a job scam syndicate in Cambodia has arrived safely in the country. The Foreign Ministry expressed its appreciation to the Cambodian government to facilitate their return.
The 4 were unable to join the other 12 on the return flight on April 11th because they tested positive for COVID-19 before departure and had to undergo quarantine. The victims claimed they had been offered attractive jobs, but once in Cambodia, they were kept in prison-like conditions and engaged in Macau scam-like syndicates, where they are forced to make telephone calls to con people for their money.
Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri Yaakob's nomination as Barisan Nasional's Prime Minister candidate in the 15th general election is described as a brilliant tactic. Political analyst Professor Dr. Ahmad Fauzi Abdul Hamid believes with the nomination secured, Ismail is able to cement support from the die-hard UMNO supporters as well as those who wouldn't consider voting the opposition.
Ismail Sabri, he's more towards the center. Being a bridge, say, between those Malays who support Perikatan Nasional and hardcore Malays, who will, whatever happens, they will support UMNO. So Ismail Sabri has, actually this strength in him. If you contrast, for instance, with those of the so-called court cluster, Zaid Hamidi, Najib, okay, and so on. And then his strength lies also, okay, in him also being able to bring the religious incline, okay, Malays, okay, from who support PAS, into a form of loose coalition and administering the government, and also being a bridge builder, okay, with even the opposition Pakatan Harapan, okay, in the MOU.
Another advantage that Ismail Sabri has heading into GE15 as the PM candidate is the fact that it was under his administration that a historic MOU between the government and a major opposition bloc was realized. Professor Dr. Ahmad Fauzi Abdul Hamid said this paves the way for the government of the day to push for reforms, while at the same time make it palatable to their voter base.
A very important development was the MOU. Now, the MOU between Ismail Sabri's government, okay, whether you call it BN-led or PN, I don't know. They have differences of views on this. But it's an Ismail Sabri-led government, and PH instituted an agreement whereby some of these reforms would actually be implemented by this government. I know Muhyiddin Yassin also had a last-ditch attempt in August 2021, okay, to strike a sort of an MOU, okay, with PH, especially with certain members from the Democratic Action Party, okay, but that fell through, okay, when people disagreed and people wanted him to go. But Ismail Sabri managed to do that, okay, and reforms, okay, like the limitation of the prime ministerial term to 10 years, for instance, anti-hopping bill. We are slowly seeing this in motion. Okay, and this is taking place not under a reformist Pakatan Harapan government, but under a under an Ismail Sabri PNBN government. Okay, so for those whom the idea of a PH government, okay, is a no-no. Malays, for instance, would try their best to avoid DAP, for instance, okay, for certain racial biases, factors, and so on. Okay, that's the reality that we have to face, okay, in Malaysian politics. Now, for these people, not all are anti-reform. They might be conservative, but they do want some of the reforms, okay, that will provide stability to the Malaysian politics.
We'll continue after the break. Stay with us.
Kita sering menyangka rumah kita tentunya bersih, namun debu-debu yang tersembunyi tetap ada. Dyson V12 Detect Slim dengan teknologi laser pengesan debu memerangkap zarah yang tidak boleh dilihat dengan mata kasar. Kuasa sedotan menyesuaikan diri secara automatik dan penapisan keseluruhan mesin memerangkap habuk halus, membersihkan tempat yang suka dicapai dan memberikan anda bukti saintifik. Beraya di rumah yang lebih bersih bersama Dyson. Nikmati plan ansuran faedah 0% dari Dyson.
Insan yang berjaya juga insan seperti kita. Didorong keazaman demi mencapai cita-cita mereka. Super. Melengkapkan juadah anda.
Welcome back. The case of Bella, a young girl with the Down syndrome believed to have been neglected and abused by her caregiver, has attracted national attention and debate over the well-being of children in welfare homes. Lawyer Beatrice Chin discusses the need to improve existing SOPs when giving out licenses to welfare homes.
Because the Women Ministry, they also oversee persons who are OKU, so it's women, children, and also Down syndrome persons as well. They oversee these three portfolios. Yeah. So what they could actually do is perhaps reassess or maybe reevaluate the standards and the minimum requirements of how a person can be qualified to get their welfare license. That's one of it. Alternatively, what they can also do is maybe also reevaluate or implement sort of a standards required to get this custody or of an adopted child. So one of the problems that I think Malaysia actually face at the moment is a lot of all these welfare homes, they are actually illegal. They're not registered with the welfare department. So Rumah Bonda is actually one of them. It's not registered and they've been operating illegally for, I think, quite a number of years now. Yeah. So another thing is maybe a much more stringent and concise guideline on the eligibility of persons who are qualified to adopt children.
Beatrice also discussed how the law can be strengthened to protect the vulnerable and if the Child Act 2001 offers sufficient protection.
It hasn't been amended for a really long time, right? So like all the other acts, when a specific legislation has not been amended, a lot of times they are not really on par with the surrounding environment and laws and the societal causes that we have. They are not really on par to assess and take into account these factors, right? If you're looking at amendments or enhancement, I would say, right, to Child Act 2001, there are quite a number of provisions that needs to be improved or included. I think the relevant provision here that Siti Bainun is charged, which is the section 31, I believe, 31 sub 1, where basically it says if a caretaker, you have failed to either neglect, abandon, abuse the person who you are caring for, then you'll be found guilty under that specific provision, which I believe it goes up to a fine of about 50,000 ringgit, or you could be imprisonment. So that section itself, actually, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. But it's more of the other check and balance monitoring system that I think needs to be embedded in the law.
On to international news. One person was killed in Sri Lanka after police fired live bullets at protesters, triggering outrage in the country that is grappling with its worst economic crisis. 24 others were injured in the fatal clash with police. Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa said that he expects the police to properly investigate the incident. Footage of police opening fire in the central town of Rambukana has been widely shared on social media. Police said they used minimum force to disperse protesters, but many have asked why live bullets were used. The incident has been condemned by the UN representative to Sri Lanka, as well as the US and EU envoys. Tens of thousands of demonstrators have taken to the streets for weeks. Sri Lanka is facing a critical lack of foreign currency. The country cannot pay for imports. Food and fuel are running short, leading to blackouts and rationing. Ukraine says it has reached a preliminary agreement with Russia on establishing a humanitarian corridor, allowing civilians to escape the besieged city of Mariupol. Deputy Prime Minister Irina Reshuk said that the route had been agreed for the evacuation of women, children and older people.
Ukraine hopes to evacuate 6,000 people, with more than 100,000 people remaining in the city awaiting evacuation. Vereshchuk hoped that the preliminary agreement with Russia would hold, as Ukraine have repeatedly accused Russia of hampering aid delivery and violating ceasefires during evacuations from the besieged port city. Russia's nearly 8-week-long invasion has failed to capture any of Ukraine's largest cities. However, earlier this week, Russia hit the last main Ukrainian stronghold, the Azovstal steel plant, in Mariupol with bunker buster bombs. Ukrainian authorities say that no fewer than 1,000 civilians were hiding in underground shelters at the plant, with supplies running out.
Over 3,300 acres of farmland in Perak is threatened by a high-tech development. Tonight on Consider This, we ask our guests about the disputes. And that is all we have for you on Awani tonight. Do head on to astroawani.com for more updates. My name is Cynthia Ng. Thank you for watching and good night.